Hey all, Plastic Commander, and that's right, just by looking at the balloons, you know today we're going to be talking about war crimes. Today we are going to be counting down the top 5 army men who are most likely to commit a war crime. So let's sit back, relax, and just be thankful these dudes aren't real people. Why won't you talk to me? So, at the top of the list, in the number 5 spot, is going to be the Flamethrower guy. So, whenever you're on the battlefield, especially before the 1980s, and you see a guy with a backpack full of flamethrower fuel and that little nozzle connected to it, you knew that you were going to be having a bad time. Being killed by a flamethrower is an absolutely excruciating way to go, as your skin completely melts off your body and sticks to you due to the fuel, and your insides cook alive like you're a baked rotisserie chicken at the clearance aisle of a Walmart. Now, the flamethrower guy, you know, the guy himself may not be a bad person. Like, look at this guy. He probably went to school in, I don't know, Maryland. Probably got a degree in literature before getting drafted to go fight in a country he had never even heard of, and to burn down people's houses. He doesn't want to do that. Look at this face. Doesn't this look like the face of an honest man? You're right. I didn't think so either. So, at the number 5 spot, the Flamethrower guy. And the reason he's so high up on the list is because, at the end of the day, he's just following orders. And in the number 4 spot, we are going to go with anyone who is a member of a command structure. Because the Flamethrower guy may be following orders, but these guys are the ones giving the order. So, whenever you have a lieutenant or a major or even a brigadier general who is just completely negligent and not paying attention to what their soldiers are doing, it can really lead to some horrible situations with the locals. One of the reasons war crimes committed by Japanese soldiers were so heinous is just because not only did the command structure over those platoons and brigades just didn't really care, but also in a lot of situations it was kind of encouraged due to a race dominance complex that the Japanese had during the Second World War. So, number 4, the guy giving the order. Here's General Grant. Luckily, General Grant's never done anything horrible. So, in the number 3 spot are going to be Japanese and German soldiers from the Second World War. So, it is pretty well known that the Japanese and the German soldiers were not the good guys during the Second World War, and if you believe so, well, feel free to unsubscribe from my channel. So, it's pretty well known that the Germans were not the nicest occupiers, especially during Operation Barbarossa, which was a operation completely fueled by hatred and racism towards Slavic peoples. And it is also fairly well known, if not as well known by most average people, that the Japanese were not that nice either. The actions of the Japanese, such as the destruction of the Chinese city Nanking, as well as the horrors committed against civilians during the occupation of the Dutch East Indies, just to name a few. So definitely these guys would be very likely to commit a war crime if they were still alive. Luckily, since they're only 3 inches tall, and trust me, I know 3 inches when I see it, I don't think they would be that much of a threat. Now, before we end off on these guys, I know exactly what you're thinking. Clay. The Japanese, just like the Soviet Union, did not sign on to the Geneva Convention, therefore they can't commit a war crime. And oh, my little viewer, we're not talking about countries that did commit war crimes. We are talking about countries, our army men more specifically, that would be likely to commit a war crime. So, if these guys were around, they would be very likely to commit a war crime. And even though they didn't sign on to it, that still makes those technically war crimes under the Geneva Convention, even though if technically, weirdly enough, they weren't committing the crime because they didn't agree to them personally that those were crimes at all. But to us, those are indeed war crimes. Who would have thought this Toy Army-Man channel would get so political? Now, getting down to number one, in number two, we're going to have these three fishermen. So you may be asking yourself, Clay, these are civilians. What could they be doing that's committing a war crime? And we're going to have to go all the way back to the year 2001. So everyone remembers the American Fish War. When we went to war with fish, George W. Bush decided that the fish had had it too good for too long, and we started fishing them out of the water like crazy. Many horrible things happened to them. They would get decapitated, skin from the inside out. They would be eaten in mass. And a lot of this still happens today, scarily enough, even though the fish war was officially ended in 2007, right before Barack Obama's presidency. So, the fish war, really horrible, and the fact they made toys of it, just displaying the grotesque actions that happened in that war, just mind-boggling to me. And you also may be thinking, well, what else is so, despicable about these fishermen? And I'm going to grab this guy here, and if you look real close, that's right, that's Heinrich Himmler, key architect of the Holocaust. And in the number one spot, we are going to be going with Sarge from the Army-Man game. So, the Army-Man games have always been really friendly kids games. However, when we start looking at the advertisements, such as this one on screen now, we realize that maybe they're not all as fun as they are all cracked up to be. I mean, look what Sarge is doing to these guys. Burning them alive in a toaster, of all things, which that has to be a violation of any kind of Geneva Convention the Army-Men came up with before fighting the Army-Men Wars. And then over here, in this advertisement for Sarge's Heroes, these guys are on the opposite end of the spectrum. They're frozen. They're turned into ice cubes, which will no doubt really anger the mother of whoever owns that fridge. So, Sarge, you got a lot of nastiness on your plate, man. And you're going to have to handle it, or else you're going to have to go to the Army-Men Hague. And go back to the initial advertisement from before, the only difference being this time, the soldiers inside of the toaster are green, just like Sarge himself. Which means now Sarge is not only committing a war crime, but what I would assume to be an act of treason. This is completely despicable, and the fact that he is the protagonist that we are supposed to look up to is absolutely mind-boggling to me. So, number one, Sarge.
Anyway, guys, I'm the Plastic Commander. Who would have thought the faces of evil would just look so terrible in plastic? I wouldn't have. So remember, don't text and drive unless you're really good at it. I'm the Plastic Commander. Thanks for watching the video.
Mission accomplished. Well done, man. Pack it up. We're going home.